Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Property Pro Tips straight from the pros. I'm your host, Trevor Henson, and today we have none other than Zach Gray. Welcome, Zach. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Trevor. Thank you so much for having me on today. Really, happy to be able to hopefully provide some value to your prospective listeners and share some about my personal experience and talk some shop.
100%. Just by you showing up here and willing to give us a little bit of time to help the next set of investors out there, you're already winning, my friend. Yeah, you're already providing value, right? So let me tell you, let's tell our listeners a little bit about Zach Gray. Zach Gray is an ex-military member, entrepreneur, and owner of a successful strength and conditioning facility in Needham, Massachusetts. From food stamps and bankruptcy as a child to building and managing his own business, Zach has been able to overcome the odds to reach financial independence through real estate by amassing an impressive 200 plus units in less than 3 years. With a state college education in finance, Zach has been able to put his knowledge to work in operating his own business as well as building his real estate portfolio. Zach has experience operating as a GP, that's general partner for those who don't know, on a syndication team and specializing in asset management, budgeting, renovation scope, project management, tenant relations, and investor relations. You can find Zach on Instagram at the1099mindset or join his company newsletter with Freedom Management LLC. Welcome again, Zach Gray. Good to have you, buddy. Woo, woo. Applause sign.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for for the introduction and just providing a little bit of context to my background, my story, and kind of a little bit about who I am. Everybody deals with different challenges in life. And I think that those are the things that end up shaping who we are and what we become and, allow for us to prosper and succeed.
100%. Our pasts shape what we are, but do not drive what we are, right? It's how we perceive. It's how we let our past affect us. Great segue. So being in the military, how was that transition into real estate investing? What was that like for you? What got you into it in the first place?
The military for me and real estate investing are a little bit, to me, two totally different phases of my life. But what I will say is that the military as a whole contributed in a way that allowed for me to get into real estate investing by allowing for me to navigate getting a collegiate degree in a debt-free end circumstance that provided me a nice blank, clean slate canvas for me to pursue real estate investing later on in my early adulthood. What I will say as well is that what actually prompted me to get into real estate investing is during COVID, I actually separated from my employer and was in the midst of starting my own business. And as Trevor had mentioned, my business is actually in the fitness space. I own a gym in one of the affluent submarkets of Boston, Massachusetts. I started running my own business right in the heart of probably the most challenging time for fitness professionals, which is, right smack dab in the midst of COVID-19.
Wow.
And what I will say is that it's not that I had started doing this and then COVID happened. COVID happened, and then I started running my own business. And with that being said,
that is some grit.
it actually started from me driving around house to house to house, training my independent one-on-one personal training clients to now I own with a partner, 4,000 square foot strength and conditioning facility where we have a physical location and we, offer a multitude of programs. We've had some college commit athletes. We run a, pretty prominent youth athlete program. We run some classes for adults and offer one-on-one coaching. And we have, a decent sized staff. We're still a small business, but effectively, to kind of bridge the gap here into real estate, what actually prompted me to get into real estate was during the time in which COVID-19 happened, vast concern was going belly up or something of the like, relative to what happened to my parents. And it was at that time that I began looking at it through that lens and focusing on how can I mitigate my two biggest expenses? And my two biggest expenses being taxes and mortgage. At the time, I owned a single family townhouse. My mortgage was dirt cheap. I was paying like 1,400 bucks a month. My main prerogative here was I said, I don't know what's going to happen with me running my own thing during COVID. And I could always go and get a job using my finance based degree, but I didn't want to give up on what I was doing because I was earning, over six figures training. And I felt like accepting a job in the business sector, in the finance sector, compromising to my values and also particularly would be compromising to my health, sitting down at a desk for a fair amount of the day, doing a fair amount of office-based work, very sedentary. It didn't really align with my lifestyle at the time. So I was more focused on how can I reduce my tax burden and how can I reduce my living expenses in order to create opportunity for my business to prosper. And while I was driving around house to house to house training all my clients, I actually began listening to Bigger Pockets. And during this time, started to understand how house hacking and being able to live in a house rent free would allow for me to have more money to be able to reinvest into scaling my business. And simultaneously, when I knew that my ability to act aggressively when I didn't have any overhead associated was far greater. So during that time, I convinced my wife to sell our townhouse, to buy a duplex. I was able to live rent free. That was kind of the jumping off point to me getting involved in real estate.
What was the hardest part of that? Was it the wife's permission? Because it would be with mine.
No, I with my wife, I approached it from a standpoint of I went to her and I said, "Hey, we're obviously going through. We certainly had no shortage of a time to be able to talk during COVID, so
That's all you could do.
I went to her and I said, "Hey, there's some crazy stuff going on right now." I said, "In the grand scheme of what we are, this life that we are going to be living together, how do you want this to look? How do you want this to shake out? What do you want your ideal life to look like?" And I said, "Write everything down." And as I became more informed on, real estate, what I kind of theorized was being able to just buy one house hack a year for 5 years. And at the end of 5 years, I'd have enough money that it would offset what I was earning in my W-2 job. And that would be enough for us to live a comfortable life where I would be able to be physically present with our family. And, we were flexible in regards to where we could be located because I wouldn't be tied to any physical location. So I think the biggest thing was my original plan was I said, what do you think is a reasonable time frame in which you wanted to start having kids, start building a family, and you wanted to start to really capitalize on living this ideal life that you had, for yourself. And, she said it'd probably be about 5 or 6 years. And so I said, okay, if we bought at a minimum, if we were able to buy one house hack per year, meaning, if we were able to buy a house, we were able to mitigate our monthly mortgage expense. We were able to save money monthly because we weren't paying our mortgage. And then the year or two, we were able to buy a second house hack. And now we would be making a little bit of money off that property and saving our monthly payment. And we were able to do this for 5 years.
Wow.
We would be in a really good spot to be able to live that ideal lifestyle. And so I basically said to her, I said, are you willing to kind of rough it and endure for the next 5 years to make this a reality? And she was like, absolutely. She's like, I really trust your judgment in being able to, map this out. And, I think it's a great trade-off. And I think, frankly, right now, there's not a better time to do it because I think that there is a lot at risk given the uncertainty. And so I think that she ended up buying into the idea. And I think that that sort of just initiated the journey. And I think that I'm happy to kind of dive into what happened from there and how we were able to kind of begin the next steps that really quickly spiraled into much more than just 5 house hacks in 5 years.
Please. How did that go? I think that's the crux of our conversation because that's very interesting to me. That leap from the all right, I got a couple of houses to like now we're actually a business and operating. What's that? What that look like for you?
Sure. So I think that what we ended up doing was we ended up utilizing a concept that is basically what hedge funds do
What
as a
hedge funds do?
means to generate very large quantities of wealth, which is borrowing money at a, reasonable rate and then seeking opportunity to invest it, in buying something or investing in something that will provide a higher rate of return than the rate in which you borrowed the money. This concept is essentially what we have utilized and mastered throughout this process to be able to scale our real estate portfolio at a much more rapid clip. So what we ended up doing is I essentially took a home equity line of credit on my primary residence. At the time, I was able to pull out $93,000 from this home equity line of credit. I had bought in the house with $102,000 down after liquidating my townhouse, 40 of which was cash. So I had a $60,000 coming from my sale, 40,000 coming from cash. I bought the house at roughly $102,000 down. I took a $93,000 home equity line of credit. So I was now in that original primary for $9K. That property I was now leaving. I bought a primary residence with a low down payment using my FHA. So I put 3% down. I bought my next owner occupied house. It was a 3-family. That 3-family I bought for $870,000. I did not utilize any of the funds from my home equity line of credit yet. Now I had maxed out my debt to income ratio relative to what the bank would allow. The property that I had left was now providing me with $3,000 a month in cash flow that I was reaping while I was still living for free in that new 3-family that I had acquired. I now had a $93,000 line of credit, which I was looking to deploy strategically into an opportunity that made sense, and to which I began starting to attend real estate-based meetups. And this was sort of the next groundbreaking step for me that allowed for me to learn at a much more vast scale, as well as become connected with other people in my immediate network that gravely impacted to a positive degree my ability to scale my portfolio and become more successful as an operator.
When I was interviewing Andrew, your business partner, he mentioned these meetup groups as well. I know they're different than what we have here on the West Coast. Would you mind telling us a little bit more about what those look like, what they are, and how they help? They help?
So effectively, there's a group in Massachusetts called Candor Realty. They are specifically an investor-focused brokerage that solely focuses on buying and selling multifamily property. So all of their agents are investor-focused. They predominantly list multifamily properties, and then what they do is they hold monthly meetups. I think there's roughly about 10 to 12 meetups all over the state that are held monthly. And what they do is they bring in guest speakers to put together presentations to be able to provide insight onto various topics regarding real estate-based investing. And it's an opportunity for like-minded folks who are interested in real estate investing to, one, enhance their knowledge basis, but two, also to, collaborate and network and share stories and share avenues that might help one another.
And did any of these folks end up becoming investors with you? Was it that kind of like meeting, or was it just a knowledge-based learning?
It was predominantly knowledge-based and learning. And what I will say is that I actually met 4 people at those meetups that have partnered on deals with me in some way since having attended those meetups. And now my goal for 2024 was to actually guest speak at least three meetups, and I've actually spoken at five so far this year. So
And when you speak at these meetups, what is your topic, Zach?
it varies, but like I've done one where I talk about how to maximize your first three moves in terms of buying properties and getting involved. I talk about sourcing off market deals. I've talked about how to scale rapidly and philosophically utilizing lines of credit, being able to take loans against your 401k, being able to utilize people in your network, being able to issue promissory notes, structuring deals in the form of a joint venture, things like that. Those are all things that I've discussed at meetups.
That is very interesting. I don't know if we have that here on the West Coast. Would you mind repeating the name one more time, so we can
Yeah, so the company goes by Simplified REI,
simplify
but
REI?
essentially the brokerage is named Candor Realty.
Okay.
My partner Andrew Freed, who also spoke on this podcast, he is an investor focused agent for Candor Realty, and he
I
actually
see.
runs the largest meetup in Worcester, which is the second biggest city in Massachusetts.
Yes, he told me. I remember his story. He moved there, didn't know anybody, decided to go into real estate and build like a group of investors there. It was like, I'm like, yeah, that was a pretty incredible story too. You guys rock as business partners. You guys tell some good stories over the campfire. How we talked about your first real estate deal. It was your townhome, or right? Correct? Is that would you
Yep.
consider that your first real estate deal? How was that? What was that like? Was the was it easy, and was the FHA process easy, or was that? Tell me what your opinion, like your journey was with that.
I solely bought the townhouse as a way to try to keep my cost of living down, find a cheap place to live. Um, we bought it as a two bedroom. We had the ability to create a third bedroom. It added some value to the property. We actually had no intentions of owning rentals at the time. We ended up selling it and then buying that duplex. One of the biggest challenges that I faced was I actually didn't have a year. I didn't have 2 years of tax returns at the time because I was running my own business. So I actually was able to seek out a portfolio based lender that was referred to me. A portfolio lender, for those of you who don't know, it means bank that essentially holds their loans in-house versus selling them off in the open market. So it means they have more flexibility surrounding guidelines in which they're willing to lend. So I sought out a portfolio lender through an investor that was familiar with my circumstance that I actually connected with on biggerpockets.com on their forums. And they referred me to a local lender that was willing to lend on my first owner occ, which was actually about 14 to 16 months after I started my own business. It forced me to have to put 20% down, so I had to sell my townhome, and that was sort of the trade-off. As I mentioned, that was one of the first challenges that I had to deal with. The second one was pretty straightforward in regards to buying the property as an FHA option once I had 2 years tax returns. And then at that time, I now was able to make use of my home equity line of credit. And this is where I began to understand the power of commercial lending versus residential lending. And the biggest difference between the two is that when you're seeking commercial based lending, the bank is focused on the performance of the actual asset. So despite the fact that I had maximized my debt to income ratio at the time, having bought two owner occupied based properties and took in a home equity line of credit against them, they were actually willing to look at the property I was interested in buying and the performance of the property versus relative to my debt to income ratio for myself. And what I will say is that for those who are a little bit more novice with commercial based financing, habitually when you are seeking value add based multifamily properties, you're oftentimes finding a property that's either distressed or poorly operated or both. And I think in the circumstance in which it's poorly operated or it's neglected, habitually there are vacant units or there are units that are under rented or under market rent. And I think one of the other benefits to commercial financing is that when you are seeking loan products in the commercial space that include the cost of renovation, so you're baking in some semblance of construction funds, one of the huge secrets is that you are actually able to use pro forma market rents to seek financing rather than the existing rent roll. And what this corresponds to is it actually translates into you being able to bring less money down to acquire that same property. Whereas if you do not seek renovation funds, they will actually require for you to bring a vast amount more down. And so what this means is, for example, in most circumstances for commercial lending, you're able to bring 25% down with even if the asset is underperforming when you are providing some form of construction budget, versus if you are, if you have an underperforming asset, you may have to bring upwards of 30, 35, 40, 45% down to close that same property. And that's exactly what I ended up doing with my line of credit.
Very great breakdown, Zach. That is an option, as far as I understand, nationwide, at least here in California. That same option exists. And as you say, that same truth exists, that commercial lending is a different animal completely than residential. Right? And we delineate that 4 units and below. For those who don't know, that's residential. Commercial is 5 units and above. That's how the banks delineate it, dictated by the Fed, because that's what Fannie and Freddie lend only on residential, and then they don't lend beyond 4 units, excuse me. So it's very, very succinctly put, Zach. I appreciate that, because there's a very big misnomer out there that you have to put everything on the line and have that you have to buy a 10-unit building the same way you would buy a single-family home. And a single-family home in California is brain damage to buy. It locks up your credit for like 90 days. They inquire about every dollar that comes in, every dollar that goes out. You have to account for and reconcile, because after 9/11 the rules, and then after 9/11 it got harder. Then after 2008 it got worse, because of all the mortgage fraud that happened during 2008 and 9, etc., with the subprime mortgage lending. It's super regulated to buy residential. As soon as you hit 5 units, all bets are off. It's a whole different story. Everything's negotiable. And I think, and to your point, it's a lot easier, even though it's more expensive. It's it's much easier, and sky's the limit. Now tell us, Zach, what's your portfolio look like today now? We heard the backstory. What's it look like?
So we own roughly about 175 units, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and South Carolina. We just own one large 32 unit property in South Carolina, roughly about 40 minutes outside of Charlotte. And the remainder of our portfolio is in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. We additionally have another 75 units under contract presently that are set to close in the next 30 days or so.
Congrats and good luck.
Thank you.
Speaking of your acquisitions this year, what do your goals for 2024 look like?
Yeah. So originally, my partner and I had kind of sat down at the beginning of the year and tried to map out what our goals were going to look like. And we kind of worked backwards saying, all right, how much access to funding are we going to have? Okay, what would that allow for us to acquire based off the average price per unit? So we settled on saying our goal this year was to try to acquire 100 units. And our existing portfolio at the time was 130. So we were like, all right, we're going to almost double the size of our portfolio. We went into the year with that being the goal. And we said, okay, so based off of, the expectation of wanting to buy 100 units, how many units would that be per month? Well, it breaks down to about, 8 or 9 units a month. So I said, that's probably about 1 to 2 properties. And I said, okay, so 1 to 2 properties per month, how many offers would we have to submit in order to have those offers? At the time, I was like, this is a crazy goal. I'm like, we got to submit 10 offers a month minimum. So that means like 2 to 3 offers a week. So I got to submit 2 to 3 offers a week. I have to get 1 to 2 accepted offers per month. These were things that we were trying to track as KPIs. So let's now look, fast forward. In the first 3 months of the year, we got 110 units under contract in the first 3 months of the year. We average to submit 25 offers per month for January, February, and March.
Huh.
We have
Excellent.
doubled the size of our team, and we have already beaten our goal for the year for 2024. And we're a third of the way.
Congratulations, man. I love
Thanks,
hearing
man.
that.
So
You should be
we're a
proud of
quarter of the
yourselves,
way.
man. You guys rock.
We're a quarter of the way through the year, and now we're kind of reevaluating.
Done. Sit back for the next 3 quarters. And,
So
right? No, we're addicted now. We can't stop.
So I think at this point we've kind of shifted
Yeah.
our focus towards gravely improving our operational efficiency, building our team out a little bit, and that's kind of the area where we're focused right now.
So to recap it, you hit your goal, your 1 year goal within the first quarter. Now, did you reset a new goal, or are you just saying we're going
We
to focus
haven't
internal?
reset it. We haven't reset a new goal. 2024 right now has already been a success. I think that we look at it and say sky's the limit, but I also think that we don't want to mess up any of the transactions that we're executing right now. And I think we're being very intentional about building out our infrastructure for our team as well as the systems that we put in place. So then that way, as we move forward, we have the capacity to be able to continue to grow.
So you're working on completing your business models during the year now, getting the turns correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more about like making sure that it's easy for our staff to be able to participate in our operations in a meaningful way in which they feel it's very clear as to what they're expected to do it.
I see. Getting some processes in place, getting everybody on the same page.
Yes.
What advice would you give to young entrepreneurs looking for financial independence, much like you?
The biggest advice that I would give is that real estate doesn't need to be the only way to achieve financial independence, but it will always make it easier. And what I mean by that is that you could not want to be a real estate based investor and want to own 150 to 200 to 250 units and deal with all running that operation. You could not want to do that. And that's fine. But what is true is that house hacking a property and living rent free or mortgage free will allow for you, as long as you do that, to save more of your earnings. It will allow for you to be able to utilize that money to grow your overall net worth and then become financially independent faster. And I think that the biggest thing is, as far as I'm concerned, there's nobody in this country that wakes up every day and doesn't have to put a roof over their head. So you might as well try to make use of a strategy that can make your life exponentially easier at a minimum. And so I would urge anybody who's entrepreneur based, who wants the flexibility and freedom to be able to create, grow, and be a visionary, to use this strategy to provide unlimited flexibility for you to do so.
Awesome advice, Zach. Awesome advice. It's the kind of advice I wish someone would have given me when I was. So you have real estate and you have fitness. How do you balance your two passions?
I'm definitely segueing out of the fitness space to a degree. I've went from working 6 days a week, probably 65 to 70 hours a week in fitness, to now I'm down to 3 days a week, roughly 15 to 20 hours a week. The rest of my time is spent in real estate. I would definitely say that materially I spend more time in the real estate sector than I do in the fitness sector. But I think that that's aligned with what I definitely have a far greater passion for real estate at this stage than I do fitness, simply because of two things. One, every person on my team that I work with every single day in the real estate space is hungry, looking to take action, looking to grow, and looking to benefit from us scaling our operation. And I think in the fitness space, I think that I think that there's less urgency. And I think that urgency energizes me. And so I would say that for that reason alone, I feel so much more energized working in the real estate space because everybody is working with a sense of urgency.
Urgency is energy. That's a great bumper sticker. Love it. And now, bringing our crystal ball, because we're like we can all see the future or something, right? But the question we're always I'm like pulling my hair out, people asking me questions like, "What trends are you seeing? Like, what do you see for 2024?" I'm like, I'm trying to see tomorrow. But Zach, what kind of trends are you seeing for 2024? What do you think's going to happen?
I think that what we are seeing, and I think that everybody can probably unanimously come to this agreement, that there is a national housing crisis for affordable based housing. I think that the biggest takeaway that I have is that we are seeing flight from white collar professionals and flight from particularly millennial slash Gen Z from urban environments that previously were the hubs, our humanity, to now they have the ability to flexibly attend their office jobs in those hubs 2 days or so a week instead of 5. And what we are seeing is that has created this ripple effect in which these individuals, white collar professionals who are focused on maximizing the use of their earnings, moving out into secondary and tertiary cities that are maybe about 30 to 40 to 50 minutes from major metro. And I think that this is now corresponding to the people who originally resided in those secondary and tertiary cities now being forced out of those secondary and tertiary cities into the outskirts. This has corresponded into us seeing, if for those of you who are not familiar, every single year the government analyzes zip code by zip code every single town in every county for the entire United States. And what's happening is that the government puts this information online under HUD's website under what's called FMR, or fair market rent values. And what we are seeing that the demographics there are shifts that are happening in which certain demographics are being lumped into these secondary and tertiary cities. So it's not, for example, you pick a secondary or tertiary city that's 40 minutes outside of Boston. That zip code, those zip codes are not one market, and then all of the suburban markets around it are a secondary market. It is all of those secondary markets and that metro are all one market. And so what happens here is that in those secondary and tertiary cities, the smaller submarkets outside of those secondary and tertiary cities habitually have less inventory in the multifamily space, but they also tend to have lower costs per unit. So what you are able to do is you are able to acquire multifamily properties outside of these secondary and tertiary cities that are growing rapidly at a lower cost per unit than these second and tertiary cities. However, they are still subject to the same FMR, fair market rent values, that secondary or tertiary city. And there is absolutely flight of occupants of those secondary and tertiary cities now moving into those submarkets looking for housing. And what this corresponds to is a phenomenal opportunity that I think that larger hedge funds are not privy to, because they are looking for 40, 50, 60, 80, 100 unit buildings. And so what we are seeing is the ability to acquire anywhere from 5 to 25 units per building in these suburban markets or secondary and tertiary cities with significant upside from housing subsidy and flight from these secondary and tertiary markets, from those that are being priced out of those cities due to these people moving from major metro out into these gentrifying areas, are now creating a significant opportunity for real estate based investors that is sort of flying under the radar of hedge fund based investing companies. And this is where we are seeing all of our opportunity in 2024.
That is fascinating. Have you invested in this?
That's literally all we do. We own, 250 units in 240, 250 units in the Massachusetts, Rhode Island space. I don't own a single unit in Boston. I own 0 units in Boston.
But you're in the Boston market, quote unquote, under the fair market value.
Yeah, I'm everything that we are buying is, 35, 40, 45, 50 minutes away from Boston.
Which, if you only have to go into the office twice a week, it's not a big deal.
Exactly.
Love it. Great. Ben, that is a great strategy, and thank you for bringing it down so clearly, Zach. You're very calculated and intentional with what you say, and I know I appreciate it, but our listeners do, because you can hear the step by step of how do you do it. So thank you for that. And that brings us to the the easy round, where I hush and just ask you questions one by one, and you answer as much or as little as you like, or if you want to pass, or ask something better, ask something better, stupid. Just say so.
Sure, let's go for it.
Or no comment, or top secret. You just tell me.
Let's go for it.
If you could invest anywhere in the world right now, where would it be?
Metro Charlotte, outside of Charlotte. So outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, I would pick. I really like Manchester, New Hampshire, and I really like sub-markets of Worcester, Massachusetts. Those are probably my 3 favorites based off my personal information.
What's the last podcast you Let me start that over. What's the last podcast you listened to, Zach?
I would probably say I most frequent the podcast On the Market, which is affiliated with Bigger Pockets. It talks more about macroeconomics and market conditions throughout the country rather than specific investor-based storytelling. I find this to be advantageous to grasp a pulse on where things are and what's going on in the general market of the U.S.
If you could teach a college course, what would it be about?
I would probably say utilizing real estate as a means of tax mitigation to be able to create freedom.
I think there needs to be more of that in colleges. What's your favorite business book, Zach?
Go Giver.
How do you unwind after a busy or stressful week?
I'm a big country music fan. My wife and I frequently go line dancing sometimes. We also go see a lot of live music. I eat very, very, healthy, not because I am trying to focus on appearance. I think that I genuinely enjoy healthy based food, and it makes me feel really good, and it makes me be able to wake up at 4 a.m. and be able to work till the day's over. So I think that I'm really thankful for that. But I think that one thing I will say is that the fact that I do eat fairly clean, I definitely do like dessert. And I will say that I have no problem putting away dessert. And I would definitely say that that's part of my weekend unwind for sure.
Bonus question. If there was a pound of a dessert in front of you that you would eat immediately, what would it be?
Ice cream's number one, man. Ice cream is number
Flavor?
one. If I had to pick a flavor, I would pick like any sort of like, it's got to have add-ins. So it's got to have like Reese's peanut butter cups, Oreo, brownie, cheesecake.
Yeah,
it's got to have a whole bunch of junk in it.
Like if it's gonna be bad, we might as well make it real bad.
Oh yeah,
right?
we're
like,
killing it.
Bring the cholesterol, fat, and every sugar.
You got it.
Bring it in.
You got it.
Love it. And last question. What's one change you've made this year that's improved your productivity?
Two things. I'm gonna slightly manipulate the question. I'm gonna list two things.
By all means.
We created a master task list that is viewable by our entire team that lists every task that has to be performed for each property. Each property is color coded based off of its own, so it allows for you to differentiate from property to property. Each task is assigned to an individual, and you have the ability to mark it as untouched, in progress, or complete. There's an ability to put in notes as to the status of the project. It's mandatory that every person in our team view this every 48 hours. And this has allowed for us to really stay on track with the status of all of the things that need to be done throughout our portfolio for every person on our team. And when we go to sit down at the beginning of the day, it allows for us to systematically follow up with the necessary parties to be able to ensure that projects are moving along. And I would say that this is, I think that what we actually do as well is that while we are kind of on the fly running and gunning, executing tasks throughout the day, any task that comes up that is new, we actually utilize what's called Slack. Basically with Slack, as the day goes along, I can throw any task that I incur as a new task into the corresponding Slack feed for any of my individual properties. I can then tag my VA in that task to have them upload it to my master list, and then who they should assign it to. And then basically every day when I start my day, I'll sit down with the master list and I'll send out all of my follow-up cadence with the necessary parties. So I wake up at 4 a.m. Between 4 and 5:30 a.m., I'm sending out all my follow-ups to all of my contractors, to my entire team, so that I'm getting updates throughout the day on everything that needs to be done. I can also reach out to all of my email contacts that I need to reach out to. Maybe it's lenders, maybe it's, realtors, so on and so forth. So I can execute that all systematically in that early going of the day, so that now as I'm going through and taking action throughout the day, I'm now getting constantly peppered with updates on things that I've already prompted.
So do you use Zach? Do you use Slack in conjunction with a task management software, or is it Excel?
The master list is actually, we created a custom dashboard through what's called Smart Sheets. So we have a full-time executive assistant that actually crafted and created our custom dashboard that we utilize to be able to oversee our whole portfolio based off of Andrew and I providing guidance on the things that we wanted to be able to access from that dashboard. So on the dashboard, we're able to look at our entire rent collection for the month. We're able to look at all of our ongoing tasks in that master list. We're able to look at all of our SOPs for our team, so our team can go look up SOPs if they have questions on things. We also have all of our contractor Rolodexes for each individual market that we operate in, so our team can access those. We have access to our Google Drive, which has all of our documents systematically stored for each entity or each property. So it's a really comprehensive, system to be able to one-stop shop, be able to access all the information that you need throughout the day for your properties.
Wow, that is incredible. That is obviously why you're successful. Like the key to it all, right there. That is so. That's some of the most forward planning I've seen from a syndicator in a long time, I must say. And tech is real, right? Our industry just doesn't want to catch up yet, and you're using it to a degree that's increased your velocity by looks like at least 4x because you got your goals done in one quarter.
That's right.
That is amazing, Zach, and that really brings us to the end of our show, man. Our interview. Zach, any parting shots? Last things you'd like to say to the audience?
No, no. I mean, I really appreciate the opportunity and the avenue for you to, provide to be able for me to share some of my story and, answer some of these questions that hopefully bring some value to your listeners. And, I would say that the main thing is, if any of you guys who are listening have the interest in being able to connect with me or have follow-up questions, please reach out to me. Best way to connect is on Instagram. It's at the 1099 mindset. And, I look forward to hearing from you guys and hopefully, we can stay in touch.
All right, Zach Gray. Well, thank you again so much for your time, man. I know these are time intensive. I know your time is valuable, so I do appreciate it. I know there's others out there that do as well. And
Yeah, absolutely.
I will see you next time I'm in Massachusetts. You come to Los Angeles, look, give me a shout, man.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.